Hello, beautiful people. It's your girl Neyssa with XPansive Taste. Here, we expand our realities to ultimate greatness and learn to receive the best out of life. So today, I'm doing something very different. It's very different, but it's also very not because on my channel, I've always aimed to be honest and true about who I am and all that I've learned in life, all that I've experienced, as much as I can, at least in a short video. Um, and I've always wanted to create something that would be of significance. All across my channel, I have so many things that I feel were just fun creations, whether it's like a music video or I don't know, whatever, some DIY projects or a cute picnic. I've always had fun creating things. I had this goal to create these things and, hope that something would hold a lot more value in a sense where like I could gain something from it. Like I could get a larger following. I've been on YouTube for a really long time and posting for a really long time, and I just haven't been able to break through a wall where I could actually see that all this effort was worth it. And so I did pray. I prayed to God and I was all like, hey, I am doing a lot and it's getting to me because all this work is just, it's being overlooked and I don't understand why. And I asked God, like, obviously, I know the goal is to create something that is of significance that could help people. And I asked, what can I do? What can I do that is undeniably valuable? What can I do that will bless the most people? And instantly, I received the message. He said, a testimony. You've written out your testimony, but you haven't spoken it. And it's time for you to speak your testimony. And in that moment, I was like, oh, well, duh. Why didn't I think of that sooner? That's so weird. And so here it is. I've got my testimony. And by when I say I've written it before, I mean, I wrote a whole book about it. It's called Miss the Point and it's on Amazon. And so this is a story about, yeah, a lot of who I was. I am not as innocent and as cute as I appear. I've been through some ugly stuff and I've been very sinful. Very, very sinful. So, through my whole childhood, I've been going to church very consistently, like every single Sunday. I can count the amount of times I've missed church. And it was like, I don't know, maybe once because of a storm, and once because I was really sick, and then another time because, I don't know, we were traveling. And so every single Sunday, I was at church. My parents took me, and we always got dressed up. It was a very important time of the week for us. So I very much grew up knowing many songs, knowing many verses, learning a lot about who Jesus is and all the other people in the Bible. And it was amazing, honestly. I loved church. Not only was I learning so many cool things about God and learning so many cool stories, but I loved it because that's where my friends were. And so it was very much like a community thing for me, because, growing up as a Haitian girl, you don't get to like go out and hang out with friends. And so outside of like being around peers at school, church was that place for me. And, we had a lot of downtime too sometimes where we just be dancing, having fun, just singing, laughing, whatever, just fun kid stuff at church. And so I love church for those reasons. And once I learned how to pray, I did it pretty much every night. I was told the whole formula to prayer. First, you give thanks, you ask for forgiveness, and then you ask for whatever it is that God wants to give you. And I did that. And I will spill my little guts in my prayers as a kid, praying for all sorts of things. Which was great because I had that relationship with God and like I knew I could tell him anything. And so that was nice. But then I don't know. At some point, of course, you start to question some things. Not necessarily, I never questioned like Christianity really. I mostly questioned myself and how I fit into that. I had this understanding that being a Christian means that you're set apart from the world, but I didn't like how limiting that actually felt, how it played out, because I would want to wear certain things or follow certain trends, and then I'd be met with like, I'd be arguing with my mom or something, and she's like, "Hey, you can't do this. You're a Christian." And it was like the simplest things. Like, for example, it was a trend to wear mismatched socks. And I don't know, like that, for some reason, it ticked my mom off. She was like, "What are you doing with this mismatched socks?" I was like, "It's just something we're doing. It's a trend or whatever." And she's like, "You're a Christian. You don't need to be following these trends." And I'm like, "It's just socks. What's the big deal?" And of course, it was other things too, like me wearing very tight clothing and wearing short dresses and that not being okay, and even wearing hoop earrings, that not being okay. And I don't know. It was very bothersome. Also, like anklets. This is more a Haitian thing than it is a Christian thing, but not being allowed to wear anklets, and that being a whole reason why everyone would just flip out and be like, "You're a Christian woman. You do not have any business wearing anklets." But whatever. And even with things concerning sex, that was something that I had an issue relating to, because um, even like at 5 years old, I had already had certain experiences that left me confused. And I won't really talk too much about that. But in general, it led me to not feel pure growing up, and that there was really nothing pure about me to maintain. And that, I don't know, I just like was desensitized to the idea of sex being something that was valuable, or precious, or supposed to be like kept within a marriage or whatever, because I didn't feel like it mattered. I mean, I had to make that experience feel insignificant and unimportant in order for me to, just carry on, because, I knew it was wrong, but I didn't feel like I knew it was wrong, but I didn't want to make it a big deal. And then when I started high school, I started to feel lots of anxiety and loneliness. Yeah, I don't necessarily know the source of that, but fast forward, it led me to come up with my own solutions. I felt so limited and controlled by my anxiety that I decided to take matters into my own hands. And I figured the only way I can beat my fears is by just stop caring about certain things. And so I decided that the ultimate way to just kick anxiety's ass and kick fear's ass was to just lose my virginity. That happened at 17. I just made a decision, and then like 1 week later it happened. I was like, "You know what? I'm tired of this. Let me just find someone to do it with, and I won't ever be afraid of anything ever again." And I don't know, whatever I was thinking. Um but that, oh, I don't even know how to like really move forward from that. I'll just get straight to the point. Once I started being sexually active, that part of me, I don't know, became awakened. And I was doing it regularly with the guy I lost my virginity to, as well as like I was being more open to just doing it with anyone else I could, or whatever. Or whatever, whoever was around. It doesn't matter. And so the person I lost my virginity to, at some point, we were having. So at some point, the person I lost my virginity to, we were doing it, and then I started to feel uncomfortable, and it just wasn't working out, and I wanted to stop, and I expressed that, and he wasn't listening to me, and so he rapes me. Um, it's I'm I'm summarizing, okay? Yeah, but pretty much that's what he did. And in that moment, I felt like God had completely left me. Like this was my experience of hell, like literally and figuratively, because like I actually feel like I was in hell. Like it wasn't just an emotional feeling, like I saw things, like I saw visions. I was in a sea of people who were also in misery, and it was a very out of body experience. And I thought it was going on for forever. It felt like eternity. But of course, I got out and it stopped. And after that, I was just like, I don't know, just a course going through the motions, putting my clothes on. And then he said, like, he knew something was wrong, but he also just wasn't accepting what he just did. And so he looks at me, he's like, what was wrong with you today? So he knew something was wrong, but he wanted to blame me. I was the problem. So he says, what was wrong with you today? And I don't think I said anything. Yeah, I just left, and that night I actually had homecoming. I just started to get ready for homecoming, and yeah, I had to turn off the memory because it was too painful, and I didn't want to accept what had happened because, you know, what can I do in that situation? I didn't feel like I could tell anyone because I felt so much shame. Like, in that moment, I felt worthless and that my words didn't matter and what I wanted didn't matter. Like, I was worthless, and that was the only reason why he could have done something like that to me. It must have been because I'm just a worthless whore. You know, I wasn't in a relationship with him. I was sleeping with other guys. And yeah, it was just a situation where I felt so much shame because I knew I was fornicating, that I didn't feel like I had the right to complain about anything or to view anything wrong that was done against me as wrong. Like, it was just. Um, and so I I get ready for homecoming, and you know, I get dressed and I decide to have fun. And I had a lot of fun. Like, this dance was, I guess, something that was my saving grace. Like, I could have been assaulted any other day, but it happened the day that I would have something to do that would uplift me, that could allow me to feel like myself again. Because when I'm dancing, I'm happy. I'm free. I feel my best when I'm dancing. And even in church, I was in the dance team, and so every time we'd be practicing some dance choreography to some worship and gospel music, it was always so much fun. And dancing became one of my first loves because of it. And yeah, so dancing at the homecoming, it allowed me to shake that feeling off. Of course not, it wasn't permanent, but it was a moment. It was a moment that I'm very grateful for. It definitely felt like a power move, like I was putting life back into my body, that I was choosing happiness over all the negative feelings that I had just been feeling earlier that day. I also danced with plenty of dudes that night because that was my choice. I decided to walk up to as many guys as I could that looked like they would be open to the idea, and most of them said, yeah, I'll dance with you. And I had so much fun that night. But overall, after that, I still was fighting this thing that was traumatizing to me, that I wouldn't accept was traumatizing and that was hurting me. And I very much internalized it all. And I would pretty much cry every night because I was just thinking that God hated me. He hated me for having all this sexual sin, for having premarital sex, for being such a whore. And like, in that, I just wasn't able to find light in the situation. And I just like kind of made my own solutions, and I was like, okay, how do I prove that I'm not this? And so what I would do is I would just find more and more encounters with whoever was willing to sleep with me, to try to undo that wrong. In fact, I still was sleeping with the first person that assaulted me because I wanted to prove that it was a fluke, and that he was and that he didn't view me as someone to be treated poorly. Like, I wanted to prove and erase the bad memory to try to create. I wanted to try to create positive memories to try to erase the bad ones, and it just wasn't working. Like, I felt like it was just it. I can't get into the details. And I know I smile a lot as I'm talking, and it's not because I'm necessarily happy about these situations. It's just what allows me to move on. Um, and yeah, I can't get into the psychology of that, okay? It's just my face. Eventually, I did stop sleeping with that first guy, but once I went to college, that was another opportunity for me to just like do whatever it is that I wanted. Even though like I would still be involved in like campus ministries. Like, I still wanted to be a part of church. I still wanted to be a part of community. I still wanted to learn about Jesus. But it just wasn't like, it was very much like a double life kind of situation where I wasn't able to snap out of what was holding me back. Just like me trying to find solutions for myself, do it my own way. And it just was like a very like long cycle of self-sabotage where I would get myself into situations where I would hope that receiving that kind of male validation would make me feel better. But it just never worked. And I attempted celibacy many times and I tried to save myself from marriage. But it just wasn't working out the way I wanted it to, because I would always give in to my feelings of like boredom or anxiety, just all sorts of feelings. Like, it wasn't ever because I was just like horny or anything. It was just, I feel lonely, I feel worthless, I feel sad, I feel anxious, and I just want to distract myself. And maybe if I get this guy to look at me, to spend some time with me, I could feel better, I could feel accepted, I could feel loved, I could feel respected. And I don't know, that's just what I was doing. I was trading time for sex. I just wanted time with others. I just wanted attention. That's really what I was looking for. And I felt like the only way I could pay for that was by giving my body away. Because I just had so much like low self-worth that I just didn't feel like I had the value. I didn't feel like I was precious enough to say no, like to just deny anything. Everything just had to be yes, whatever you want. I don't want this in this situation, but you want it and you're here, therefore I have to give it to you. That's pretty much the essence of what was going on. I was very promiscuous, and really putting myself in situations I had no business doing. Like, I was meeting up strangers, I was letting them pick me up and take me wherever. I was even like at 17, I was online masturbating, just for strangers, not because I was horny, but just because I wanted the attention. I was so desperate for any kind of validation that, I don't know, maybe had to do with like putting a price on my sexuality or whatever. Like, even though it was all free, okay? Honestly, like, I know this is like a terrible thing to say, but like sometimes I think, man, I wish I got paid for all that. Anyways, um that's over. Anyway, me being in the college dorms, away from the parental supervision, left to my own devices, not only was I very promiscuous and just sleeping with anyone who was around who wanted to be with me, whatever. I was also trying to find other ways to be at peace. And so I was drinking, I was partying, I was doing drugs. Mostly like I was smoking pot. Like, I don't think I ever got to a point where it was like I was, smoking blunts after blunts every day. But I felt dependent on it in a way that I didn't want to be. Like, I knew that I was probably only getting high like a couple times a week, but it still felt so terrible because I just didn't want to be high like that. I didn't want to feel like I needed any sort of substance. And I say mostly weed because I was open to a lot of things. Whatever was around that someone offered me, I would just be like, yeah, like, let's see what that's about. And probably, not the best thing. You shouldn't have to be so open to the things that you know could be harmful or experiences that really don't align with who you're meant to be. I tried to have as much fun and I tried to escape as much as I could. But overall, like, it just wasn't the answer. No matter how many times I partied, no matter how many times I got drunk or smoked this or sniffed that, like, it just wasn't enough. And I don't know, I would always just feel like empty and just be like, well, what do I do now? There was just this hole in me that couldn't be filled up because that's where, God's spirit was supposed to be residing in. I only have 7 more minutes left to say what I need to say. And I just, there's so much I want to say, but I just will not be able to. So, for the most part, you can read most of everything in my book, Miss the Point. But in general, like, this kind of lifestyle, it led me to a lot of pain. It opened me up to a lot of hurt and disappointments. Like, I've put myself in such terrible situations and I've been treated so terribly by so many different types of people. And I really needed to remove myself from situations I had no business being in. Because when you do open yourself to all these things that are of the world, you will get hurt. You indulge in sin, and the devil comes to try to destroy your spirit. And I was not in a good mental headspace. And like, even after all that, like, I stopped having sex with so many different people. And then I still found myself, when I was not looking towards God, I still found myself in a very toxic, emotionally abusive relationship. And it really wasn't until I left that situation that I was really ready to look at what was missing. And, I started praying more. I started going to church. I started to really dig into the truth. And in that, like, I literally cannot express this. But yeah, in general, Jesus is great because he's brought me so far and he's protected me like so many times in these situations. And God has always been there with me in those situations, just waiting for me and, providing me with grace and mercy. And I truly have been restored from all of that. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect now and that I don't sin. Like, I still do. And I repent. But yeah, Jesus has accepted me through all of that and decided to show me love. And I've had multiple spiritual, like, encounters. I've had an encounter with God like when I was like 7, I was 18 actually. But yeah, this was like, even though I experienced God's love and like I felt his spirit and I recognized that he loved me, this was back when I thought that God hated me for what I was doing. I felt that and I knew that I was like, everything was going to be okay in that situation. And because of that, like, you can't ever convince me that God isn't real because I felt him, I experienced him, and I was healed in that situation. Yeah. And so even though I experienced that, like, I still ended up backsliding, and forgetting about, who God is and why I should always fix my eyes on him. And even now, even though I've been delivered and healed and I've come to so many different revelations, like, I still get distracted and I haven't been to church and I don't know, more, maybe almost a year. I haven't been to church in formally, like, in church. Like, I've been to conferences, but I haven't been to church in almost a year. And I've been really sad about that. Yeah, and I know I have to make myself go. And I know because I didn't go to church for a while that I've been feeling like, something was missing this whole time and I've been so distracted and distraught over a number of things that I feel like I'm missing out on. But yeah, I'm running out of time, guys. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I will make a part two, hopefully being more detailed, and I'll answer any questions you have. That is all, beautiful people. I send you my love. Mwah. Bisous.